Hello YouTubers and welcome to my review of The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon, the first story of the sixth series of Doctor Who Revival, starring Matt Smith, Karen Gillan, Arthur Darvill and Alex Kingston as the Doctor, Amy Pond, Rory Williams and River Song. Now, this story is actually it's quite a good story to start off Series 6. A lot of people don't seem to like Series 6, but if you watch my Series 5 reviews, I'll put that in the description below, I said like a couple of times that Series 5 is my least favourite series out of all of the new series. I know a lot of people like Series 5, but personally I don't really like it. A lot of people class Series 6 as the worst. Personally, I think Series 6 is an improvement, although not perfect, and definitely not my favourite. It's probably the second worst series out of all the 7 we've had so far. But without further ado, let's talk about The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. So the Doctor has summoned Amy, Rory and River to America. This episode, well, this two-parter I should say, was actually filmed in America, which I remember when it first aired, everyone made a big fuss about it, saying, "Oh, it's in America, Doctor Who is in America," things like that. And it's the first story which is an opener. It's the first series opener that's been more than one episode since season 26 back in 1989 with Battlefield. That was a Sylvester McCoy story. So it's a nice change to start off with a two-parter, as it's not been done before in the new series, which it's a nice change, I think. And I think it's a very good two-parter to kick off the series. We finally find out who the Silents are as well, which is brilliant, because all the way through the Series 5 we've had numerous references like, oh, Silence will fall and all that type of thing. And there's still some unanswered questions from Series 5, such as who blew up the TARDIS in the finale, Pandorica opens and the Big Bang. But I voiced my opinions on that story, and there's some, while it's an okay story, it's definitely not the best finale. I think it's probably the worst finale. I always seem to dislike a lot of things about Series 5. But anyway, he summons all his companions, basically. River has more of a companion role in this series, and this astronaut comes out of the lake as they're having a picnic at Lake Silencio, and the Doctor just walks up to the astronauts, and the astronaut just basically kills the Doctor, and he's starting to regenerate. So it was a real shock when this was happening for the first time, and then he got shot again during his regeneration, which meant he's dead. So he got burnt on the funeral pyre, similar to Star Wars, seeing as when someone dies in Star Wars, they seem to burn people. Characters that come to mind are Qui-Gon Jinn, and of course the greatest character out of the Star Wars saga. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. You probably want to go off this video now. Darth Vader has also been burnt after after he dies, because he's weakened by the Emperor. But why am I talking about Star Wars? We're talking about Doctor Who. So Doctor Who, it's a good series. It's a good two-part opener for this series. I was really happy with it. Although there's it's not perfect by any means. A younger version of the Doctor then emerges. So it turns out, he's not actually dead. The one that died is actually the older version, and it's really smart how Stephen Moffat works it into the script, the whole time travel thing, and it makes sense. I think it makes perfect sense, and they go and search for Canton Delaware because for some reason Canton, who's this random America guy who works at the White House, some reason he is summoned as well as the three companions to basically see the Doctor get shot by the astronaut. Now, is it me, but what relevance does Canton have? It just doesn't really make that much sense. But Canton, the actor who plays him, I can't remember his name at the top of my head. I know his name, but I can't think of it right now. But he does a good job. They go back in time to the 1960s when President Nixon, controversial US president, was in charge at the White House. And I really like the scenes, when the Doctor, when TARDIS first enters and TARDIS becomes invisible. I really just like the acting by Matt Smith when he enters into the White House. I think it's really cool. I think it's a really good scene. It just shows off the Doctor's alien side, because this Doctor is a very, very peculiar Doctor, to say the least, but a very good Doctor, mind you. So yeah, we have Nixon, we have Delaware, we have a bunch of other Americans pointing a gun at Matt Smith after they discover him inside the White House, think he's some sort of threat. And I really like that type of stuff, I really like how he interacts with Richard Nixon throughout the story in both parts, especially at the end of the story when the Doctor says, say hi to David Frost for me. I really like that, because for those of you unaware, for all you younger viewers, let's say, David Frost was the person who interviewed Richard Nixon in the late 1970s, and it was all to do with his controversial time as president, because by the late 1970s, Richard Nixon he was no longer president. I think that was, but when around the time it was made, I think it was either Gerald Ford or Jimmy Carter. But the point I'm making here is he got interviewed for a lot of scandals that took place while he was president, such as the Vietnam War and, of course, the scandal that actually forced him to resign his post as president in, I think it was 1974, and that was the Watergate scandal, and there's a lot of things happening there, tapping to phones and whatnot. There was all sorts of controversial stuff that this president done. So the fact that it's all more or less referenced with one line, "Say hi to David Frost for me," brilliant. I just that little detail I really found quite amusing. So yeah, for those of you who were unaware of this, now that line makes sense, hopefully. So it's after a while, the Doctor tries to persuade the President and Canton that stuff is going wrong. And before they arrive, the President is listening to this voice on this message recorder thing. And it's this little girl saying, "Help me, the astronauts come to get me," something like that, I can't remember. But it's along those lines. And it's just really good how the Doctor gets involved. I really like Rory and River in this story. I think they play a good role. Amy does to some extent, but I'll go into that later in the review. In fact, let's stay with Amy now. There's a scene when Amy has to go to the bathroom because she's feeling very sick. She goes to the bathroom, she sees this American woman, and then all of a sudden you see a silence for the first proper time. You see like glimpses of it, like just before, but the proper reveal, it's really good. They look like the painting, like the Scream, like that. That's what they're actually based off, like the suits and the faces and everything, and the massive hands. The hands are huge. These monsters are absolutely incredible. I mean, if you had like a 5-inch figure and you compared it to like a normal one, like an 11th Doctor action figure, and you put it next to a Silence, it's massive, huge. That's in classic. That's in action figure form, of course. Of course, I'm talking about the actual size in the series as well. They're just huge. You know, I don't even know if they fit through a doorway. They're just huge. So they look threatening. That is absolutely brilliant. The look of the Silence are absolutely brilliant. So alien. I really like it. I think it's a great introduction to what is really a sort of misused villain, because it's been hit and miss. But I think by far the best appearance is in this story. The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. So we get the Silence, and he actually kills the American woman with electricity coming out of the hands. At first, when that happened, I thought, could have done it another way, but I suppose there wouldn't be another way because it probably would have scared the children. The reason for this, why I thought, there could have been another way, that they could have killed people instead of just electricity zapping out of the hands, is because how many times have we seen it in Doctor Who now that electricity has come out of villains' hands? If I name a few, there's a few villains from, let's say, Planet of the Spiders, and of course you've got the Master in The End of Time, David Tennant's last story. He's shooting out electricity for fun in that story. So I just feel that the whole electricity zapping out of their hands, it's a bit repetitive, but at the same time, like in another way, it's cool. It does work to some extent, and they look the part. It's after a while they go looking for the little girl, and they go into this place. Canton actually is sort of like a companion in the story. He's a bit like, he plays a role a bit like what Kazran Sardik does in A Christmas Carol. So he's kind of like a part-time companion in this story, along with Amy, Rory and River. So after that, I really like the scenes between Rory and River. They go down underneath the grounds. Then they find all these Silence. I just really like the concept, how you look at them and you just see them right there, and then as soon as the character looks away, can't remember them. So I really like that concept. It would have been so good if the Weeping Angels and Silence had some sort of battle together. I think it would be epic. Because obviously, if you look at a Weeping Angel, you die, you're buggered. And it's just at the end of part 1, it's revealed that Amy is pregnant. And at that moment, I thought, this is an EastEnders moment. I thought it could have been done a bit better, to be honest. And I don't know, but I think the cliffhanger to The Impossible Astronaut, although it's good in some way, I'm not knocking it in any way, I still feel there's too much stuff going on. For instance, you got a Silence that zapped Rory, so we presume that Rory's dead, but of course we all know he's died before and come back. And then you have Canton, who's like fainted. You've got the astronaut walking towards the Doctor and Amy, and to top it all off, to top all of that off, to put more shit on the pile, we have Amy saying she is pregnant. Where the hell did that come from? But more to the point, second episode of Day of the Moon, also good. You know, both of these episodes are really good. It's really well written and it's really well directed. I really do like the way the story has been handled. It's the way two-parters should be done, in my opinion. And you know, it really makes me sad that we hardly get two-parters anymore. Hopefully we get them in Series 8, but at the minute it seems a bit doubtful. But part 2, it's set around 6 months later, after the events of part 1. Amy's like on a run from Canton. It's like the FBI sort of thing. And they shoot her down. Likewise with Rory, shoot him down. So you presume that, they've killed them. But obviously not, seeing as it's only the second episode in this series. River runs away, she just jumps off a building. Meanwhile, the Doctor has already been captured, he's got this beard. Hers, like, really long. It's a fake beard, by the way. Matt Smith didn't actually grow the beard. And he's in this room. And it's like this box. And it's like, it's the sort of the biggest prison in the universe or something like that. But where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, let's wind back 2 episodes ago. We had the Pandorica. Again, sounds a bit repetitive, but you know, it's still a good idea because it's cool, like the way he gets imprisoned. I really like it. It's a really long pre-title sequence as well, just like the series finale. It goes for both episodes of the story. Really long pre-titles for some reason, but it's fine. You know, I really like the build-up. It's all a plan. It's all a setup. It's been planned, and the Doctor actually lands the TARDIS. It's like sort of landscapes, like going up like that, and the doors are like that, and River just like falls in to the swimming pool, so she gets all wet through. Amy and Rory have only just been stunned, and they're just inside body bags. I really like the scene when Rory says, "You really need hair holes in these things," and it's after that we get see this creepy guy who's at this household. It doesn't do a lot in this story, but I think that his acting is really good. Amy goes with Canton to this house, and then she gets captured, obviously. It's typical. And they find out, like, the other guys in the TARDIS, the other guys, and River, they find out because they have this thing on the thumb. It's like a mini sort of recorder sort of thing, and it activates after you see a silence. The silence capture her, and then we see the TARDIS from the loggia. Now, it's still not being explained to this day why the hell they were operating that TARDIS. Was the set reused or something? Or what? We need to find out. Sorry, Stephen, but we really need to find out. You need to explain that. If you explain that, then I'll be fine with everything now. The Doctor, he puts this thing inside the NASA shuttle that's going to the moon, because it's 1969, and of course that's when man first stepped on the moon as well, which is a very momentous occasion. But it's then when everyone sees the silence, because the Doctor's tapped with something, has made it go all viral. So that's really good. I really like that twist. It's a really good twist. That's how he defeats the silence. And the silence all get pissed off after they arrive and after their plan's been foiled. And they just start attacking. And Amy and Rory both go back inside the TARDIS. Oh yeah, one thing to mention. I don't like the scene when Amy's like, "You're always the one," because it's like tension. Like, is she talking about the Doctor or is she talking about Rory? Like, the way she says it, it sounds as if she's talking about the Doctor, but she's actually talking about Rory. But I think it's a bit stupid, to be honest. Plus, she keeps calling him stupid. I mean, if you go back into Series 5, when did she ever call him stupid? I don't recall her calling him stupid, so that's a bit stupid. Plus, the Doctor is using his sonic screwdriver, yet he now has the ability to shoot stuff out of it. But at the end of the day, it's River who kicks all their asses. They go back into the TARDIS. The day is saved. The Doctor drops River back at prison. River gives him a snog. The Doctor's like, "Oh my God." So yeah, more is to be revealed. So they're more than just friends. They're actually a romantic sort of couple. Bit weird, but yeah. Amy and Rory then go with the Doctor. They continue the travels, because Amy and Rory were still on their honeymoon, like at the beginning of the story. Canton's dropped off back at the White House, but then he says he wants to be with his lover, and it's implied that he's gay. So I guess it's fair enough. But I think it's a kind of controversial thing, because, in terms of the plot, because the time period he comes from is the 60s, and back then homosexuality was frowned upon. So Nixon's just there and he's just like, "God, what are you doing, man?" And then it's just at the end of the story we get the Doctor looking at Amy. Amy said she's not pregnant after all. She's just been silly. She's not pregnant. But then the TARDIS is scanning her and it can't decide whether she is or not. So she could be, but she couldn't. She is. I knew she was. Silly cow. But at this point I thought, oh my God, is the Doctor the dad? Thankfully he wasn't. It's the very end though. The very end. The little girl inside the astronaut suit. It's revealed that she is actually a Time Lord, and she starts regenerating in the street in New York, and a tramp watches on, and he flees from her, and that's the end of the story. So overall, it's a really, well, it's a solid start to Series 6. I quite like this story. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Thank you very much for watching this review of The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. Sorry it's been long. It's been over 25 minutes. I'm going to end it here. Tune in next time as I shall be reviewing The Curse of the Black Spot. Ugh.